As I promised, before we get to know Git, I'd like us to do some work in the command line so that we know some useful commands. The first thing we will learn will be the clear command, also known as CLS. Let's go to our command lines. As you can see, I have my Git bash open on my left side of the screen and PowerShell open on the right side of the screen. Now I will go to my Git bash and type CLS. And if I press enter, we can see that this command is not found. Well, let's try it in our PowerShell. CLS, enter, and you can see it wiped the whole console. You need to know that there are some differences. Some commands work the same, and some require writing different things in different CLIs. For example, in Git bash, we have to enter clear command. And you can see this works perfectly fine. But the clear command also works in PowerShell. If we type git, we have all the information about the git in PowerShell right now. We can type clear and our console will be cleared. As I said, we have Git bash on our left side of the screen and our PowerShell on the right side of the screen. And now I want to show you how you can find these applications in your system. The simple way is to go to the search option on your system bar and place Git bash. Here you can see it if you want to open it, or enter PowerShell and you can see it and open it as well. If you would like to open the simple command line, which is CMD on Windows, you can also find it by typing CMD, and you can see this command line in your start menu as well. Now take a look at this directory right here. In Windows PowerShell, the first line is always our default directory, and this is the path to the folder that we are actually in our command line right now. We don't see it in the first line of Git bash, but if we look at the application bar up right here, we can clearly see it's the same path. It's on our C hard drive, in our users folder, and then we get the username of our system. That's the same thing as in PowerShell. We get the same path. So this is the default path to the users folder on your Windows, and that would be your username, which you actually use on your system. Mine is Dapit, or you can pronounce it Dapit, and that's how my friends call me. And that's the default path and default place where you start working with command line in any command line you will open in your system, which is Windows in our case. But how can we move between folders? Say we want to go to the folder on our desktop, which you can see right here. I have a folder on my desktop, which is inside another folder. And if we want to go to work in this particular folder, we can drag it from the Explorer and place it in our command line. Let's make it. And you can see the path to this folder right here on your monitor. It's the same thing you can do when you want to drag it to Git bash. It's as simple as that. You can see they look a little bit different in those two CLIs, but they actually mean the same. Now, if we would hit the enter button in PowerShell, nothing will happen. We get the error because if we want to go to this particular folder or anywhere else, we have to use command cd. So what we need to do is to place cd space and then drag our folder. So we can get cd space and then the path to our folder. Let's hit enter right now. And you can see everything worked perfectly fine. Now our first line is the indicator of which folder we are in. You can see I'm on my desktop in a project folder where I have a folder courses, then a folder Git, and then a folder CLI. Let's see how this works in Git bash. Now I have only the path to our directory. Let's hit enter. And that won't work because we have to use the cd command just like in PowerShell. We can see that our path is still the same, which is users.pit. But when we type cd command space and then we drag our folder like this and hit enter, everything worked fine. We can see here we are in a new directory, as well as we can see it in our application bar, which is the folder we want to work with right now. So we can drag folders to our command line, but it's not always suitable or possible. So to move between folders in our CLI, we can use the cd command with different parameters. For example, if we want to go to the parent folder of our directory, we can use the cd command with 2 dots. Let's go to PowerShell. Let's make cd with 2 dots, hit enter. And now we can see we are in the previous folder, which is Git. Earlier, we were in a folder named CLI, which is within our folder Git. Let's try to type it in our Git bash. cd 2 dots, enter. And we can see that command is not found. Because if we want this command to work in Git bash, we have to place a space between cd and those 2 dots. Let's try it this way, and voila. You can see that we were previously in our CLI folder, and now we got back to our Git folder, which is the parent folder of our CLI folder. You can see this technique will also work in PowerShell. When we place cd space 2 dots, we can go back to the previous folder, which is in our case courses. Now if we want to get to the subfolder from where we are, we have to type cd and the name of the folder we want to go. So let's try it. Let's go to our PowerShell. We know we are in our courses folder and we want to get to our Git folder, which is inside this courses folder. So let's place cd Git. Let's hit enter and voila. Now we can clearly see that we are in our Git folder. It works the same in our Git bash. Let's go back a little bit. cd space 2 dots. Now we are in our courses folder. So now let's place cd space Git. And we can see we are back in our Git folder. We can also always go back to our default directory by typing cd space and tilde. And if we hit enter, you can see on our application bar right here that we got back to our default directory. And it works the same in our PowerShell as well. cd space tilde, enter, and you can see we are back at our default directory as well. If we want to check directory we are actually in, we can always type pwd, press enter, and we get the path that we are in at the moment. It works the same in Git bash as well. pwd, enter, and you get the path you're in at the moment. But we can also build more advanced paths. Let's go to our PowerShell, type cd space. Let's drag the path to my main folder on my desktop, hit enter. Something freezed for a moment, but now you can see we are back in my projects folder, which is on my desktop. Let's do the same in Git bash, cd space, drag the path to the folder, hit enter, and we can see we are actually one folder further, but we can simply go back by typing cd and 2 dots. And now we are on my desktop and my projects folder. So it's exactly the same path as in our PowerShell right now. And I wanted to show you that we can create more advanced paths just like this. cd course git CLI. It doesn't matter if you use backslash or forward slash. In PowerShell, everything will work just fine. Let's hit enter. And you can see we have an error right now. But that's because I named the folder incorrectly. But I did it on purpose just to show you something. Now if you press arrow up on your keyboard, you can go back to previously used commands. And it's very comfortable. You can now use arrows up and down to choose from lately used commands. So let's go to our command we previously used. And as you can see, I didn't place the last letter in our courses folder. So I'll do it right now. And now if I press enter, everything should work just fine. As you can see on your monitor right now. And you can clearly see those slashes were converted by PowerShell with no problem. So you can use any slash you want in the path. Now let's clear our console. Let's clear it as well in our git bash. And now I want to show you how you can display the content of the folder you are in. We can use ls command to do so. ls stands for the list. So if you place it like this, we will get the list of files which are included inside this folder. Let's hit enter. And you can see it on your monitor right now. We can see we have index.html file, readme.txt file, and our style CSS file. Now let's do the same in git bash. We won't go to this folder first. So cd courses git CLI. Let's hit enter. Now we are in our CLI folder. So let's place ls command to see the list of the files in this folder. Let's hit enter. And we can see these are the same files. It's displayed differently, but it works exactly the same. You can also place dir command like this. Hit enter and you'll get the same effect. It also works in PowerShell. And it will also get the same effect as with the ls command. Now let's clear our consoles. We already know how to navigate through the folders in a command line. I will show you something else now. We can open a certain folder directly in the command line. If we are in our Windows Explorer with open some window, we can click any particular folder with the right mouse button and choose this option, Git Bash here. And this way we will open Git Bash with already opened this folder in it. Now let's do something else. Now I would like to show you how to create folder in command line. To create a folder in command line, you have to use the command mkdir and after space, place the name of the folder you want to create. Let's call it first and hit enter. mkdir stands for make directory, so it might be simple to remember that this command works as a creator of the folder. So now we can place the dir command and have a look if our folder was created. As you can see, we have this folder created because previously there were only those three files, index.html, readme.txt, and style CSS. And now at the first position, we can see the first folder, which is the folder we just created. So now we can go to this folder. cd. And here you have another comfy option. When you're starting to write the name of the folder or the file, you can press tab on your keyboard. So the command line will auto-complete this name for you. It really comes in handy with long names. Now all we have to do is hit enter and we can clearly see we are in our new created folder. Now let's go back. Let's go to PowerShell. Let's type ls to see what we got in this folder. We can see we got our first folder created. So let's create the second one, mkdir, and the name of our folder, which would be second. Let's hit enter. And we got the information that this folder was created. Let's type ls once again, maybe using arrow up on our keyboard. As I said, you can choose from latest commands used using the arrows on your keyboard. Let's choose ls, press enter, and here you can clearly see we have our first folder and our second folder. Let's clear the console and let's go to our folder cd sc, and as I said before, if you press tab on your keyboard right now, the PowerShell will auto-complete the name of the folder or file you want to go to, and then all you have to do is press enter. So it really comes in handy. And as you can see, we are in our second folder, which we just created. You could see the differences in spelling from what you could see in Git Bash, but it works the same, so there's no problem at all. Now I want to show you how to create new files in command line. Let's go to PowerShell. Let's go back. Now we are in our CLI folder. If we want to see where we actually are, we can type pwd to see exactly our path. Let's type ls to see what we got in this folder. As you can see, we have our new folders created. Let's go to our first folder. Or actually, you know what? Let's go back for now, because I want to show you something in Git Bash first. Let's see where we are. pwd. Pwd. We are in our CLI folder. Let's press ls to see the list. We can see we have our two folders created. Let's go to our first folder. And now let's create a new file. Now you can type the touch command, and after space, the name and the extension of the file you want to create. So let's create index.html. Let's hit enter. Let's see if it's there by typing dir command. And we can see we have our index.html inside our first folder. Now we can type a notepad command, and after space, the name and the extension of our file we want to open in the notepad. And now if we press enter, this file will open in the notepad, as you can see on your monitor right now. But now let's close it. We can as well use the command code to open this file in our code editor. For example, index.html. Now if we press enter, this file will open in our default code editor defined during the installation of Git, which is in our case Visual Studio Code. Let's close it for now. And I wanted to show you that this is not the only way to create the files in the command line. Moreover, it won't work in PowerShell. Let's go to PowerShell for now. We are in our CLI folder. So let's go to our second folder. And let's try to create our new file with the touch command. For example, style CSS. Let's hit enter. And you can see all we got is error. Let's clear our both consoles. And now I will show you another way of creating the files, which is using two angle brackets and then writing the name and the extension of our file. Now let's hit ls command to see if this file was created, and we can clearly see it was. Now we have index.html file and style CSS file in our first folder. We can do this also in another way by typing echo in quotation marks example. Then we place 2 angle brackets and the name and extension of our file. After the echo command in the quotation marks, we can place the content of our file which is being created. And after the angle brackets, we place the name and the extension of this file. Let's hit enter. Let's type ls to see if it's created. We can see it as well. Now let's try to open it with the notepad command and placing our file about HTML. Let's hit enter. And you can see this is our file open in the notepad with the same content as we placed here in the quotation marks when the file was created. And this way will also work in PowerShell. Let's try it. Echo. After the echo command, if we leave empty quotation marks, the file will be created, but it will be empty. We can also use this command, null with the $sign in front of it, and it will also mean that our created file will be empty. So let's leave it this way. Now 2 angle brackets and the name and extension of our new created file. Let's press enter. Let's hit ls to see if it's created. We can see it worked. And as you may know, we can of course open it with our Visual Studio Code using the code command and placing the name and the extension of the file we want to open. Let's hit enter. And voila, we have our file open in our code editor. If we are already in our code editor, I want to show you something. If we press Ctrl and tilde on our keyboard, what we will get is the terminal. So it's the same command line that we are using outside our Visual Studio Code, but in this way we can use our command line integrated with our code editor, which is very comfortable. Here you can see I have PowerShell as my default terminal. You can see it right here. You can press this plus sign to open another terminal. Then you can choose from them. You can place pwd in the terminal. See, it's the same path, the same default path as in all terminals, all CLIs, command lines. It's all the same. But we don't have to work in PowerShell if we don't want to. If we go to View, Command Palette, and if we type shell, we will get this option terminal, select default shell. If we click it, we can choose which command line we want to open as default in our Visual Studio Code in the terminal. So you can use Git Bash, Windows PowerShell, whatever you'd like to work with no problem. So I can choose Git Bash now, like this. And now when I click this plus sign, the third terminal is open in Bash, which you can already see here. And I can choose from them however I want. The first one is in PowerShell. The second one is also in PowerShell. The third one is in Bash. And you can work like this however you want. Using terminal in your Visual Studio Code is very comfortable because at the top of our code editor, we can place our code, and at the bottom we can use our terminal, and it's very fast and comfortable. We will work in Visual Studio Code later in this course, but for now let's just close this because we have other things to do before we will jump into the code editor. Okay, so we created a file in our PowerShell. Now I want to show you that this way of using only the angle brackets to create a file won't work. which in Git Bash works totally fine, as you may notice here. You can see our file was created with no problem. It would even work if we use only one angle bracket, just like this. And you can see it as well. It works totally fine. But remember that using only one angle bracket does not prevent us from overwriting file if a file with that name already exists. As you can see, everything works fine. Now I want to show you how to remove files. To remove file, all you need to do is place the rm command, which stands for remove, and the name and the extension of the file you want to delete. For example, file txt. Now let's place ls to see if it worked. And we can see we only have file2.txt, and our file txt was deleted. Let's clear our console. You can also place something like this, rm asterisk dot html, and it will remove all the HTML files from that folder. Let's click enter. Let's place ls, and we can see that we don't have any HTML file left. We've learned some basic commands and saw what it looks like to work with the command line, which is the basic way to work with a computer, where we communicate with the computer by the commands and not by some graphical user interface. Now we are ready to start working with Git, and in a moment we will create our first repository.